Welcome to Connect at 51, the online Bible study from the Midtown Connect of C3 Church Manhattan. This video is designed so that you can get together as a group of any number, watch the video until you see a question screen like this, then pause the video and share your answers with the group. Then continue watching. There'll be a total of 7 questions today, and the first one is this. If you could have any vehicle you could imagine, what would you get? This week in the news, a Florida man received nearly $4 million after fraudulently filing for the Paycheck Protection Program. And what did he do with all this money? Well, he bought a Lamborghini. Clearly, this was a very selfish person who was looking out for his own interests in a time of national crisis. And his choice of car reflects this. You see, Lamborghinis are designed to only seat 2 people. This means that you really aren't getting this car to share with others or take passengers with you on your journey. And today the topic is about growth. We're going to explore how to expand your capacity and to take more people with you wherever you're going. So to do this, we're going to look at a passage in Isaiah 54. Sing, barren woman, you who never bore a child. Burst into song, shout for joy, you who were never in labor. Because more are the children of the desolate woman than of her who has a husband, says the Lord. Enlarge the place of your tent. Stretch your tent curtains wide. Do not hold back. Lengthen your cords. Strengthen your stakes. For you will spread out to the right and to the left. Your descendants will dispossess nations and settle in their desperate cities. Do not be afraid. You will not be put to shame. Do not fear disgrace. You will not be humiliated. You will forget the shame of your youth, and remember no more the reproach of your widowhood. For your Maker is your husband, the Lord Almighty is his name, the Holy One of Israel is your Redeemer. He is called the God of all the earth. So this passage opens with the phrase, sing, barren woman. What do you think this barren woman might be referring to? It's worth noting that Isaiah is a prophetic book, and one of the key themes of Isaiah is the fall of Judah at the hands of the Babylonians. So with that in mind, the imagery of this barren woman is in fact the nation of Israel. You can see how this makes sense when you consider the entire nation had been exiled from their lands. The people are strangers in a strange land and forced to serve their Babylonian captors. With no land, no freedom, and what it looked like to be no future, you can see how an infertile, desolate woman is an appropriate metaphor for the exiled nation of Israel. In these times, not having children was deemed as a humiliating embarrassment and a shameful disgrace. So how do you think people behave when they feel ashamed and humiliated? In verse 4, Isaiah connects the words afraid and fear to shame, disgrace, and humiliation. You see, shame creates an atmosphere of fear, and fear can often cause people to hide, retreat, and isolate. However, in the midst of this time of Israel's greatest humiliation, Isaiah is telling the nation to sing and shout for joy. He's also saying at the end of verse 4 that you will forget the shame of your youth and remember no more the reproach of your widowhood. So how do you think it's possible to simply forget shame and move from disgrace to joy? This next part of Isaiah continues with this relationship metaphor. The turning point for the barren woman, that is Israel, is the twist that God, the Maker, is her husband. The Holy One of Israel will bring his wife back, and in this return there's a reversal of all the shame of the past. Isaiah is able to sing and shout for joy in the midst of disgrace because he can see beyond the current circumstances and has a vision for the future. And that vision is one where there will be many descendants, there will be land, there will be cities, and all because there's a return to God. Now, it's worth noting that this husband and wife imagery continues in the New Testament, where the church is described as the bride and Christ is the husband. This means that this message of Isaiah 54 not only applies to the nation of Israel 2,500 years ago, but it applies to us as the church today. So knowing that God is our partner and that there's a good future ahead despite what current circumstances look like, Isaiah tells us that now is not a time for fear, but it's a time to prepare for growth. Isaiah talks about enlarging the place of your tent. In other words, prepare for more people in your life, your ministry, your family, or your sphere of influence. He then gives us steps to make this growth happen. Firstly, stretch your curtains wide. So what do you think it means to stretch your curtains wide and to not hold back? The curtains are the entrance to our tent. So to stretch the curtains wide is to make it easy for people to get in. Reducing the barrier to entry is the first step to growth. Having a narrow curtain filters who we let into our lives. The narrow curtain can filter out people of different races, different beliefs, or socio-economic groups. It can even filter out people that have offended us in some way. Stretching the curtains wide is to be hospitable to a wider range of people rather than staying in our comfort zone. And then there's the idea of not holding back. Have you ever seen a restaurant or a theatre that has a line out the door, but inside there are empty seats and empty tables with a suspicious reserve sign on them? That is holding back, keeping space in reserve for someone who probably won't even show up. Isaiah is telling us to enlarge our tent. We need to not hold back and use every opportunity to reach who we can. And the next step to growth is to lengthen our cords and to strengthen our stakes. So what do you think it means to lengthen your cords and strengthen your stakes? Tents are secured to the ground by rope that is staked into the ground. For a bigger tent, you need more rope. Now, let me get a bit sciencey here to make a point. Rope or cords are really great in tension. That means that they can hold a lot of force when they're pulled. And the other property of rope is that it's flexible. It can bend. So for growth, there needs to be a degree of flexibility and the ability to not break when pulled in different directions. And this brings us to the next point, that stakes secure the cords into the ground. And the bigger the tent, the stronger the stakes need to be to secure the tent. You see, strong stakes is an analogy to having a good foundation that can cope with this increased capacity. The strength of our foundation is found most securely in the solid rock of Jesus Christ. And as we build our house on that foundation, we have a solid place to increase our capacity. Now, even in this time where it may feel like we're in exile with social distancing, online church, and virtual Bible studies, this can actually be a time of growth. So I hope that you can use this time to increase your capacity, to strengthen your foundation, and prepare yourself to reach more people. So the final question to discuss is this: how can you increase your capacity for reaching people?